What's going on, ladies and gents? It's Salvajee. I'm back at it again with another Anthem build video. Now, there's a lot of melee builds out there for the Interceptor. A lot of them are actually really fun. In my opinion, this build that I'm about to show you guys right here is one of the best, most consistent builds sort of overall, okay? And of course, just in case you're new around here, I'm going to break down the build in the first section of the video, sort of teaching you guys why it is that I went with, the specific items that I chose. And then for the second part of my build video, I'm going to be going over gameplay examples and of course breaking them down to teach you guys how you can maximize this build. Also, later on in the day, I have a video where I soloed a Grandmaster 1 legendary contract using this build, and I didn't do it on Grandmaster 2 because right now melee in Grandmaster 2 doesn't do that much damage. So let's go over our weapons. We have Unending Battle. I do think this is an essential for the build. You're only going to be using Unending Battle to finish like targets that are really weak. But here's the reason why we have Unending Battle, right? It's going to be really good for medium ranges if we ever need to actually shoot the thing at a medium range, like maybe against a boss, for example. But on top of all that, we have Gladiator's Wrath. Hitting an enemy at a close range is going to increase our weapon damage and melee damage by 110%. If you guys can get a magazine size perk on this thing, it would be really awesome. If you guys could get a machine pistol or just a damage perk on the weapon, it would also be really awesome as well. We have the Pop-Up Pump for our secondary. So this is one of the tips. You guys are going to be seeing it on the gameplay examples. Unending Battle, we shoot it at a really close range. We see a shielded target, we take out the Pop-Up Pump, and we bring down their shield extremely quickly. You guys are going to see that on the mission that I soloed later on in the day, and you guys are also going to be seeing that on the gameplay examples. That's why we have the Pop-Up Pump. It's just a really good burst damage and really good at melting shields, and also pretty decent overall, guys. It's not that bad. Also, when we reload the weapon, we are going to be receiving a 100% bonus damage for 15 seconds to the weapon, and that of course again helps when it comes down to melting shields. So assault system, absolute zero. Some of you guys are like, dude, why not Spark Dash? I mean, I actually have this Spark Dash right here that's really good, and I have this one right here which has an extra charge. So why not Spark Dash? Why not Ruthless Stalker? Why not Venom Bomb? So here's why I went with absolute zero. It is absolutely one of the best items for a melee build, and I'm going to explain why. You throw the thing, you freeze the enemy, you get the freeze aura. Every single enemy that you hit with your melee, they're going to get frozen. They're not going to stand a chance. You guys are going to be seeing how I maximize this ability, of course, in the gameplay examples, but that's why I believe you absolutely need absolute zero. See what I did there? Also, this thing is also a primer, and when you hit an enemy from above, it detonates an icy explosion that honestly I don't really think it's that big. Strike system, we're going to be going with Sudden Death, one of my favorite Interceptor abilities. It's so awesome. I mean, I experimented with a lot of things. I experimented with Sanidine's Respite, Detonating Strike, Wraith Strike, Viper's Bite as well for sort of like a melee build. I had the most success with Sudden Death, and honestly, the #1 perk that I recommend for Sudden Death is charges. If you guys can have 200% charge for the Sudden Death, you're going to be so Gucci because you're going to have 3 Sudden Death, and Sudden Death does a lot of damage, alright? And if you have more than 1 Sudden Death, your build isn't going to be limited as much. Since I only have 1 charge for Sudden Death, I have to be smart about when I'm going to use Sudden Death. But of course, I'm going to be breaking down how I, maximize Sudden Death in the gameplay examples. We got Target Beacon for obvious reasons. It's going to be, of course, giving us the ability to do more damage. Components, pretty simple. Conductive Lattice. This is going to be, of course, performing an electric explosion when we hit an enemy 3 times with our melee. Really good for melting shields. Really good for, of course, also melting our opponents. We got Way of the Swift, a must-have perk. If I hit an opponent with my Q or my whatever, if I hit an opponent with a mouse 5, my mouse 4 is going to take some more. It's going to have 50% more damage. What does that mean? Okay, that means that my Sudden Death is going to be doing mad damage, and it's going to be great. Elusive Talisman, I don't really think I'm going to be running this component anymore. I am running it, however, because sometimes I do want to instantly reload my Pop-Up Pump, but I feel like Elusive Talisman could easily be replaced, honestly. It's not that necessary, specifically since I only use gun with this build about maybe 5% of the time, 10% of the time. We got Vengeance Matrix. Now, the reason why we have Vengeance Matrix is because sometimes we're going to be at that close range fighting, our enemies. And on low health, all damage is increased by 25%. So basically what this means is that if for some reason your health goes down, you're going to be doing more damage, which means you're going to be able to finish off the opponent, and you're going to be able to, of course, get the health pack that he's most likely going to be dropping. We got Way of the Bold. Defeating an enemy with melee is going to be restoring 20% of our health. This is an absolute must-have. On top of all of that, our aura combo pulse strength will be increasing by 40% as well. Really, really good. And then we have Way of the Resolve. So this increases Interceptor melee damage by 10%. But this is an essential perk for this build, by the way. Dashing increases melee damage. And in the gameplay examples, you guys are going to see how I maximize Way of Resolve. So what are the must-have components that you absolutely need? In my opinion, you absolutely need Conductive Lattice. You absolutely need Way of the Bold. And you absolutely need Way of Resolve. Vengeance Matrix can be, of course, very helpful as well. But these three masterwork components, they're not really that much of a big deal. Let's jump into the gameplay examples. Let me teach you guys how to maximize this build. Okay, so this gameplay example will be teaching you guys the basics of the build and what you want to be doing when it comes down to movements to be leveraging melee as much as possible. All gameplay examples are on Grandmaster 1. See the description below if you're interested on why. So I'm going to throw down my Absolute Zero. Then I'm going to trigger my Tempest kick. This is going to give me Aura Ice, which is going to freeze all the enemies that I hit with my melee. My Conductive Lattice electricity is also going to be spreading around the freeze as well, which is why I like Conductive Lattice and the Ice Aura with this build, because they just synergize perfectly. I'm going to throw my Targeting Beacon to this guy, which of course will then move on forward to another target. I was hoping it was going to move on to that guy, no big deal. I see that there are sniper scopes, so I'm going to reposition myself into an area where I can actually see where the snipers are at. And then I'm going to use my movement to, of course, hit those targets. Throw down my Absolute Zero, bring down half the dude's shield, Tempest Strike, and this sniper is no longer going to be a threat to my team. I want to move on forward to this other sniper, but of course, my teammates did take that other sniper out. So, of course, good job to them. So I see that these enemies are all the way over here, so I'm gonna dash on towards them, and then I'm going to land my Tempest Strike. And as you guys can see, I was able to take out a couple of them. Now of course guys, when it comes down to Tempest Strike, you always want to make sure that you're trying to use it when there's a lot of enemies around, or of course when you see a lot of enemies grouped up together in the distance, specifically the ones that you prime with your Absolute Zero or that your teammates are also priming. As you guys are also going to be seeing in the gameplay examples, when I move on forward from one enemy to the next, I'm not triple jumping towards them, I'm actually triple dashing or dashing towards them so that I can get that Way of Resolve melee buff. Alright, so let's take a look at how we can maximize our Conductive Lattice and our Tempest Strike, specifically if we only have one of them. Since I know that I only have one Tempest Strike, that means I am very sort of disciplined on when I actually use Tempest Strike, and I don't just use it on cooldown. I'm going to use my Tempest Strike right here because I know it's going to be, of course, KOing this guy and doing some pretty decent damage to these other enemies. And then, as you guys can see, I'm going to be getting Aura Ice, and I'm going to be freezing the Legendary Scar Scout to my left. And guess what? My Conductive Lattice is also going to be damaging him at the same time. That's why Conductive Lattice is just really, really good when it comes down to this build. I actually had no idea where I was taking that damage from. I don't know, maybe it was the flamethrower. Now, a mistake that I make commonly with this build is that sometimes I just completely forget that I have my ultimate. I mean, I guess it's because sometimes at the time of me making this video, the game says you have your ultimate, but you don't. So right here, I could have easily activated my ultimate on this guy, but I didn't. So let's take a look at how I handle this encounter. I throw down my Targeting Beacon and my Absolute Zero. One of the reasons why I prefer Absolute Zero over Venom Bomb, like I said, is because Absolute Zero freezes targets. Now, right here, I see that this dude has the flamethrower. I don't want it to hit me, so I'm going to be using my movement to, of course, constantly be confusing this AI around. And as I'm moving around, I'm basically buying time for my next Tempest Strike to come in so that I can solo this target. Now, of course, I have a teammate backing me up, so I am, of course, going to hit him with melee a couple of times. I see that my Absolute Zero's back. I'm going to throw down my Absolute Zero, and I'm going to, of course, go for my Tempest Kick, and that's basically going to lead to me taking out this target. And of course, as you guys saw right there, I was on low health, but my Vengeance Matrix kicked in, and that little bit of extra damage was able to, of course, help me take out that Enforcer fully. The lesson that we can learn from that encounter, guys, is that you don't have to be meleeing things all the time as an Interceptor. You have to know when to retreat, and you also have to know when to move around so that your cooldowns come back, and of course, how to use movement to stay alive. So let's actually break down how we can go ahead about doing that. So in this scenario, I'm activating my ultimate against this gatekeeper and I have a lot of enemies around me. Now, the biggest mistake that a melee based interceptor can do is have tunnel vision and just constantly be spamming the melee key on one enemy when you have a lot of enemies around you. You need to be aware of your surrounding, but most importantly, you also need to use your movement so that you can set yourself up for success when it comes down to eliminating enemies. I'm going to finish off using my ultimate against this gatekeeper because this gatekeeper was a high priority target. But as soon as I'm done using my ultimate, I realize that if I try to melee a specific enemy, I'm just gonna get destroyed. So I start meleeing this Elite Scar Scout. I want to at least bring down his shield, but I'm getting shot. So I'm going to be using my movement. If you don't know how to master movement with the interceptors, check out my advanced movement guide. So as I'm going around with my melee jump, I'm going to be throwing my absolute zero. I will then use my Tempest kick, and now I have Aura Ice, which means every single enemy that I hit is going to be, of course, getting frozen. I will dash towards this enemy for my melee buff, and I am able to finish him off. I'm gonna throw my targeting beacon, and then, of course, I'm going to go after this dude right here, which of course is a high priority target because I believe this is one of the minigun guys. I'm going to be using my Tempest kick against him because I like to use my Tempest kick on high priority targets. Guys, do not use Tempest kick on trash mobs. I see that there's another minigun based enemy around me, and I don't want him to melt me from 0 to 100 real quick. So this is where, of course, our weapons are going to come in handy. I'm going to get the boost from our unending battle, and I'm going to whip out the pop-up pump shotgun to bring this dude's shield down. I will then, of course, throw down my absolute zero, go for the Tempest Strike, doing some high priority damage on this target. And on top of all that, I also have Aura Ice, which means that this high priority target is now going to be frozen and basically eradicated by your boy. So I see this other dude down here. I'm going to repeat the same strategy, get my buff from Unending Battle, take out the pop-up pump, do some pretty decent damage to his shield, and then, of course, me and my teammates are going to be able to take him out. So as you guys saw, I was able to use movement when I had a lot of enemies around me, and this of course led to me actually being able to stay alive until of course my teammates came in to of course offer me some backup. On top of all that, as I'm also moving around, I'm also confusing the AI, and of course the more time that I spend moving around, it's also time that I'm waiting for my abilities to also come back on cooldown. Alright, let's talk about utility now and why I just love Absolute Zero. This turret was frozen, but if it wasn't frozen, I would have thrown down my Absolute Zero on it, and I would have, of course, freezed the turret. And now, as you guys can see, I'm going to go for my Tempest Strike. I'm going to throw down my targeting beacon as I'm meleeing the turret, but I already see that we have a turret in the background, and I also notice that my other Absolute Zero is going to be coming back. And basically this gives me a lot of utility and freedom because that means I can basically charge this turret by myself, and if it starts shooting me, I can of course freeze it. I'm going to go now for my Tempest Strike, and then I'm going to get some easy damage on it. But I'm taking damage, guys, and again, you don't want to have tunnel vision when you're meleeing as an interceptor, right? So I am going to be moving around, and I'm going to stop meleeing the turret, and as you guys can see, I'm going to be able to take out the turret with this teammate of mine. Let's take a look at how I use utility on this gameplay example. When it comes down to my Absolute Zero, I'm going to throw down my targeting beacon. I will also throw down my Absolute Zero. And as you guys can see, I'm going to be able to get some easy damage on this turret. I'm going to trigger the Unending Battle perks so I can get more damage to my weapons. And then I'm going to finish off this turret with, of course, the shotgun. I believe a couple of my teammates were helping me out on this turret though, but the point is proven. When it comes down to utility, you know, the Absolute Zero can be, of course, very, very amazing. Alright, so I saved the best for last. Let's talk about how, of course, you can adapt when it comes down to melee combat with the interceptor, because the thing about this melee build, guys, is that it can be picked up by anyone. You know, it's not an advanced build. You don't need extremely advanced mechanic. You do need some advanced movement, but I already made a video on that, so make sure you check out the Anthem guides playlist. But whatever, when it comes down to being a good melee interceptor, you have to know what the enemy is going to be doing. As you guys can see, this enforcer hits me twice with his shield, which means that I'm able to learn from my mistake. So the third time he's about to swing his shield, I double jump, and I of course fall down on him with my conductive lattice, and I'm able to finish him off. Now, like I said, guys, you have to be able to adapt to the enemy so that of course you can maximize melee with the interceptor. If you know what the enemy is going to do before they actually do it, you're going to be able to of course dodge their attacks. And I just want to let you guys know, in the video where I am doing a GM1 Legendary Contract solo and I'm using this build, I am also of course sharing with you guys my thought process as a Melee Interceptor. So I'm going to shoot this guy with my Unending Battle, which has extremely underwhelming perks, which is why it's not going to be able to do any damage. But I realized that it's not really doing much, so I'm going to be using my Tempest Strike and I'm going to start meleeing this dude for some actual respectable damage. As he's about to hit me with his shield, however, you guys can see that I jumped. And the reason for that is because I have already adapted to the Enforcer thanks to the previous Enforcer that I fought. I'm going to be going for my Tempest Kick. I see that I have my Absolute Zero. I'm going to activate my Absolute Zero. I'm going to be going for my Targeting Beacon, and that should be enough to finish off our target. And when it comes down to the Swarm Tyrant boss, I like to of course use my Unending Battle on him. But honestly, when it comes down to weapons, guys, as long as you have something that's really good for the medium ranges with this build, you're honestly pretty Gucci. You don't really absolutely need Unending Battle. I just like it because of the synergy it gives us when it comes down to weapon damage as well as melee damage. And I love the Pop-Up Pump because of course it's a shield melter, as you guys saw. Anyways, when it comes down to Skelos, you can go around and melee him a couple of times. And when it comes down to the Heart of Rage boss, yeah, I don't consider that a boss because that dude is a huge bullet sponge. I hope you all enjoyed the video. You know, feel free to drop a like, feel free to subscribe to join the Salvajee Cartel if you're interested in more quality Anthem videos. We got the Division 2 also right around the corner. Looking forward to that. And yeah, looking forward to making more quality content, boys. See you on the next one. Peace out.